Welcome to the third edition of the Unconsumed podcast. I'm Lee Corning, and my esteemed colleague,
I'm Chris Ryder, still.
The one and only. Last week we were talking about some funny things, and then we talked for a short time about things that are offending people. And I actually have spent the last, it's always been something that's on my mind, but it's something that I've looked into with some depth in the past probably 6-7 months. Is that when people are offended, there are reasons why, and some of them are more philosophical, and I discussed that at lunch, having to do with where they fall in the power hierarchy, which is something that there will be more trained individuals to tell you about than you and I here joking around. But the one thing that I can find historically and also presently is that if you are offended, it's probably because you're finding ways that things that occur outside of your power kind of shake you a little bit, and they threaten your stance where you fall in the power hierarchy, wherever that is. And so my thought, and kind of a Western thought over time, is in order to not be offended or not be shaken by things going on around you, is to look very locally, look inside your own house, look inside your own office, and say, I need to fix some things about myself that would make me what the historical, larger, ancient term is a more honorable man. And this is obviously applies to women as well. But in the case when a person can over time exemplify the attributes of an honorable man or woman, it's easier for them to remove the need for them to feel like this, whatever's happening around me is threat. It's a threatening force in my life. So what do you think about that?
So who more apt to talk about honorable men than
you and I,
the two of us?
Right. So we said in the first podcast, just because I'm saying that I'm throwing all this stuff out there, it doesn't mean that I'm not opposed to it.
I'm kind of joking, but kind of serious. I know you as a man of honor and integrity, and so this is less about us though, and more about what the general attributes of an honorable person are.
Right.
Beyond that, also in this episode, we're going to get to some fun things as well, some hobbies that may, as we talked about, looking locally, looking internally.
Right.
We'll talk about some hobbies that that you can get into. I think as we get into adults, and you were sharing some of this as well, we get caught up in work and home and eat dinner and go to sleep, and then you have a weekend routine, and you sort of forget about some of the things that you can do that are fun, that are community building, that are family building.
Right.
And so we've got a short list of ideas there as well, based on our own experiences.
Yeah, I mean, and some are things I couldn't even do myself, but I think it's a good idea.
I agree. I have one of those as well.
All right. Well, awesome.
It should be a good time for our viewer today.
Yeah. Thank you, viewer, for coming back for the third time. So the idea of the honorable man or honorable woman or honorable person, however you want to say that, is a very old one. And so the first really well recorded versions of this are in Greek mythology. The one that is still most subscribed to worldwide is the Judeo-Christian God. And I don't want to get too into religion or anything at this point, but there is something that we observe in the Western world in particular, that it is a heroic figure or someone that you can count on or you can trust. And I have a list of things that I think that make up that person. So
I'd love to hear them and agree or disagree. At some point, we keep teasing these heavier conversations. We're going to have one.
Yeah, well, today, and if it doesn't go well, we'll go back to the shtick.
No, but I mean, I'm interested in some. We talked a little bit about it, but you're right that there is a historical nature to this, and it is being exuded in a very modern way, and in some ways it's not being exuded. So let's see what you got.
Yeah. So first things first is is that, you know, if you're going around doing your life, you'll start to observe, and you know these things, you'll start to observe people trying to mimic or like live these things out. Like our hero stories, we talked about the Marvel comic stuff. There are traits that these writers are trying to embody that is this heroic figure.
Right.
It's the archetype of the hero or the demigod kind of thing. My list starts with a respectable man, an honorable man, tells the truth as best he can. So the ability to tell the truth is, you know, when you tell the truth these days, you are challenged because there's a lot of other ideas out there. So I think what comes with this one is tells the truth but doesn't provoke.
Yeah, the first thought on telling the truth, I think, is what's probably gotten the hardest there, and maybe this is most recently, but there used to be a few sources of truth. You know, when our parents were watching TV, there was the three evening anchors who spit the truth, and they actually, I think, knowingly held themselves to a standard because they look, there's only three places they're going to get this from, and I have a civic duty to impart truth. That's obviously not the case now. You've got a 24-hour news cycle on a numerous number of outlets, and it's not about truth-telling. There may be elements of that, but it's really about clicks and views and
eyeballs,
and eyeballs, and so I think the people who used to seek to tell the truth because they would end up in those outlets now recognize what drives those outlets and don't necessarily. That's not really what is being consumed.
It wasn't the original charter, you know.
Yes.
So have you ever seen that? There's a documentary out there, and I'm struggling to remember it, but it's about how the news cycle became a contest for clicks and eyeballs, because up until, I want to say 1980 or something, Walter Cronkite was the most trusted man in America.
Right.
That's a pretty well documented statement, but when it was opened up and it wasn't PBS, it wasn't a publicly funded outlet, now we have competition for ears and eyeballs and clicks, and that's what's created the massive division and the talking heads type of media. That's fair to assume, right?
100%. And even though that started in the 80s, it probably was like this until you got the internet and you got cable news, and then it's just, man, as fast as you can go. It's this industrialization of ideas.
Yeah.
That was pretty well said, huh?
Brilliantly said. You must write stuff down.
Trademark that. I didn't write that down.
You know, so one other thing on this whole list is that honorable traits are easily corrupted, right? So there is the person that tells the truth, but they use it as a hammer. And I'll list off the rest of these, and you'll be able to figure out what like a corruption would be.
I don't want to derail this. I just want you to think about this, and I want you to think about this as we go through this.
Yeah.
Do you think that these traits are inherently the standard for all of us, and they are manipulated or worked out or decreased or changed, or are these things that we have to learn and aspire towards? Are we protecting these things within ourselves, or are we trying to gain them? And I don't know the answer. I'm just thinking about maybe some are one and some are the other.
Yeah.
I guess it goes to the question of, are we inherently good or inherently bad?
Well, that's a topic that would cut this right in half, right? Because it says if you believe we're inherently good, we shouldn't really need to worry about any of this, right?
Well, you can be inherently good and have the outside world pull those things out of you and change them. Like, we may all start with this list in us. It may be our character traits, but as you get jaded from work and society and what you read online and what people tell you you should value as opposed to...
We'll get back to heavier ones, is not addicted to anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not addicted to anything.
Right.
Yes.
Like, you could pull this person out of where they're comfortable and they would exist with the same level of function.
Okay.
It's not one you hear every day.
No. at the end of your list, I have a more finite list that I'm going to come to and I'm going to share with you.
Well, I'd love to if we could, come away with this from like something to take away, like a list.
I have it for you.
Beautiful.
I'm going to share it.
Faithful in their primary relationships, starting like mother-father, brother-sister, husband-wife, father-child. It's like a pretty good standard one that you see.
Agreed.
That one's still in pretty good place in the United States.
Yep.
Temperate, meaning like you can rattle their cage a little bit.
Yeah.
They're all right.
Yeah.
I think that's one still in a good spot. Hospitable. Able to articulate kind of falls in that truth category.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. I like that one a lot. I not to derail this too much, but I was actually talking to my wife about this recently. You think about how complex the human brain is and how complex our thoughts and ideas are. They don't translate themselves directly into language.
Right.
But we're supremely limited by our language.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless you're a fantastic artist and you can convey emotion and ideas in art, and that's something different. But for the lay person, we may be incredibly intelligent, and sometimes I feel this way about myself, that my language inhibits what I can express because I can only get out what I know and what I've learned.
Right.
And I'm incredibly, I have a lot of admiration for people who are very articulate and can say things exactly how probably they think them. And to me, it is like an artist. The difference between me and an artist is they see that tree and they can go paint something.
Right.
And I see that tree and I paint it and it looks like a child drew it. Doesn't mean our perception of that tree is any different. I may appreciate it every bit as much as he does, but he can convey what he sees better than I can.
Right.
And an articulate person can convey their thoughts. Does this go without saying? I only came to that like a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it hit me like a stick.
So there's an old Twain quote, which is the difference between the right word and the wrong word is the difference between a lightning bug and lightning. It's like...
That's a great quote.
Well, he's one of the most articulate people that we can find.
And to be able to say something so simply...
Right.
To me, it's an art. It's something you can improve and learn, but there's an aspect of it that's in you or it isn't.
The ultimate input into articulation, I believe, is having spent time studying something. And so you and I talked about this. There's a few books I read every year just to get rebrushed up on them.
Right.
Because I'm going to find myself in times where I'm thinking, okay, so I have to be able to tell people what I mean and do it in such a way where it's compelling and I have my facts right and I can lay my case out without getting holes punched all over it.
Yeah.
Even though that might not change my opinion at all. Like if my argument gets beat up, it doesn't change my opinion at all.
Right.
But it's not having any effect after it leaves my brain and enters the air.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's an interesting one.
It is. I would not have thought to put it there, but it absolutely is an aspect of an honorable person that I admire. So
right, and it's the way history remembers this and continues to remember this is that's tied in with the ability to tell the truth.
There you go.
Okay. Fulfills their responsibilities. That kind of ties in. Like you can look around and see someone that maybe they're doing great at work, but their house is falling apart.
Right.
You're like, what do you got going on here, man?
Yeah.
Which is it just asks questions about their honorability. My one that I love is can overcome adversity. So, and this kind of falls in that power hierarchy conversation is people, and we don't want to get too deep into that, but people that are struggling have trouble getting over adversity, and there's a million reasons why. But if you look a couple rungs up from there, you start to find people that have handled very difficult things. And it's just like, that's par for the course, that's table stakes, that's the price of admission in honorability in my perspective, because if you can't take anything, you'll never have a chance to dish anything.
Yeah, I wonder what percentage of this you think, and it's probably not completely clear, but I don't think there's a whole lot of it's this or it's this. I think of everything as like some shade of gray. So you're not gay or straight. You're somewhere in the middle. Now you may be way over here. You may be way over here. But there's not one or the other. That's what I think. I think you have elements of right-leaning, left-leaning, conservative, liberal. You may be on one side or the other, but it's sort of narrow to call things one or the other. My point is, I read some articles about brain science and about impulse control.
Right.
And so the people who you think of who make poor decisions, who maybe struggled in college, who get DUIs, who've done things that are bad decisions over and over.
Right.
Their brain operates differently than someone's brain who doesn't, who thinks ahead, maybe even to a fault, but is always thinking about 3 steps. If I do this, yeah, I'd love to have another beer, but that's going to be a DUI on the way home. Or yeah, that girl's pretty good looking, but I have a wife at home, and that's not going to fly.
Right.
Though I'm curious. So on that point that you mentioned, how much of that is biology
In terms to overcoming adversity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you may be able to overcome adversity because you have great foresight and because your brain operates in a way that you see the future to some degree. You're thinking ahead. You have the end in mind. Whereas someone who is it's kind of that fight or flight, similar brain function, there's something happens, they immediately respond without thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So some of that plays into overcoming adversity, and I don't know that we'll answer that, but I think there's an element of your biology and your own brain chemistry that dictates how you'll fare there. And then there's some element of just what you do and how you react.
Yeah, so I'll tell you this. In terms of, there's a whole branch of science that would tell you that you don't have any really free will or anything. You don't have the option to impose your will on an environment at all.
Mm-hmm.
You're just in an environment, and your chemicals are making you do things. And I don't believe that.
I don't believe that.
Well, I mean, it's a massive predisposition to that.
I believe that there is. There's some of that. Like I said, there's no black or white. It's not this. It's not you're in a petri dish and you have no ability to affect the outcome. But I don't think it's that you have every ability. It's sort of like when an NBA player says, hey kids, don't ever give up on your dreams and you can make it into the NBA.
No.
That's total garbage.
Right.
You can make it into the NBA because you have these innate gifts physically that I don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can overcome some of my physical limitations with hard work, good luck, skill building, but I can never reach Michael Jordan or LeBron James's physical capabilities because I wasn't born with that.
So those are limitations and an extreme example. So I played basketball. Not very well. I'd say I spent a lot of time on the bench.
Here we go. I played basketball. I'm just kidding.
Right.
You did go to a college to play. You were on a basketball team in college.
Yeah, but when I say I played basketball, I mean at my highest level, I spent time on the bench. We can be totally clear about how that goes.
Look, not many people get to a college bench.
Well, hey, I appreciate that, but there are higher levels of where you can get with what you're dealt, right?
That's right.
And
yes.
there are very poor places you can get with what you're dealt.
Yes.
And I believe the honorable man goes to the best side of the equation as he can go.
That's a great way to put it.
Because there's a lot of guys with low IQs that are doing great.
That's right.
There's a lot of guys right?
I'm in that category.
There's a lot of guys with really high IQs, and I look at it and I think, man, that's
you're wasting.
You could do better.
Yeah.
Well, that's another point. But I was going to say, I look at myself and I think, you could do better.
No, I agree with you that the honorable position isn't to overcome all adversity. It's to achieve as much as you can based on what's in front of you.
What do you have?
Yeah. Okay, good way to put it.
Okay, I actually like that. I didn't think about that before. Here's one that lives in your court. Works as long as is required.
I saw this on your list, and
Right.
and yeah, I thought of myself there.
Right. So, like, there's a lessening chance that working people in America will retire within their time. So, I have fully come to grips with the fact that I don't know if I will get to retire, and if I do, I don't know if I'd enjoy it. But people that want to retire and don't have the option, it's honorable to go see it through as far as you can, right?
See, I have looked at, I have a very low risk strategy if I go to a casino.
Okay.
And my strategy is if I double the money I start with, I'm out. I leave.
Right.
And so I have this goal,
Right.
and when I reach it, I go. The goal isn't to spend 4 hours there because eventually it's going to be gone. The goal isn't to make as much money as possible.
Right.
It's to achieve this and go. And so, yeah, I have the same, I set this a while back, a strategy to retire at a certain age.
Right.
And that, in some ways it's good, in some ways it's bad. It's driven me to be very conscious of, what I make and what I save.
Right.
And what I do with those things, the choices I make. Am I driving a $70,000 car, or am I, my 10-year-old truck works fine? But maybe that's too much to think about and too much stress to think about when I'm 40.
Right.
But at the end of the day, yeah, I'm gonna work really hard, and when the job's done, I'm gonna enjoy life a little more.
Yeah, that one.
And if I die on a plane, like right before that or right after, I'm gonna be super pissed.
I think this one, I love that it comes with the caveat, as long as it's required, is that I'll go do my job, but once I've delivered on what I said I would do or what it was demanded of me, our contract is then complete.
Yeah.
And I think at the base of a lot of these honorable things, there is a contract. It's, I say this, you said this, when it's done, that's a wrap.
Yeah. And the first part is I do what I said. The second
Right.
part is it's a wrap.
Right. And I'll go find another contract if I want. Right?
Yes, right.
And I think that's fully understandable. Finds community and adds value even at your own detriment.
Yeah, this is one I think I probably need to strive and do more of,
Right.
especially in the example I just gave. What did I just say is driving, my purpose right now? It's that. And it's my family protection and providing, but...
Well, it's part of your community right there.
Yeah, but I would say that my community is very small right now.
Right.
And it should be larger. And I admire people who make a better effort to make their community that they impact larger.
Right.
And it's just a matter of effort.
Yeah.
I have the desire to do it. I just don't put enough effort into it. I need to do better.
Yeah.
I don't know how you. I know you're active in other things.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you say a word like community, it's open to interpretation on what the size of that is. So, I think when I hear the word community, I think that's just the new word for tribe,
Mm-hmm.
which is defined as groups between, I think it's 5 and 120. And so, yeah, I think in that scope, I am active in under 120.
Mm-hmm.
But if you start saying your community is all of Austin, Texas, no, I don't touch that.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm nowhere near that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to branch out off of my street.
Yeah, and so the word here that pops out is even at their own detriment, right? So we're saying that right now.
Right.
Is I want to, but a lot of time, a lot of effort.
That's
and
right.
It's going to cost me.
Yeah.
So it is honorable to overlook that. Has empathy, inspires empathy.
Yeah, I mean I think that's a pretty straightforward one in my mind.
So this one is interesting to me because I actually ran into this term in the Greek, and there's a single Greek word that is the stem word for sympathy, empathy, and apathy, which are really, they're
Different.
just feelings, but they're very different, right?
Right.
So sympathy is I feel bad for this person. Empathy is, I may feel bad, but I can understand their situation. And apathy is, I get it, I understand it, I don't care.
Yeah.
And so if you have time or you're interested in that epistemology is it original words?
Yeah.
Check that out. It's pretty interesting stuff. And there's ancient Greek implications there. But this is a hero trait that I really like. It saves, feeds, and heals those in need. So this is where like Marvel Comics, like they've focused on this one.
Yeah.
Is that we'll even equip our honorable man with some mutated gifts to
go do these things.
Right. Which I think is really interesting because, you know, when you have a person and you say save, heal, and feed, those are superhero type of traits. So we create these guys and they can do all those things, and then you can kind of aspire to what they do. But now I think that's changed. Now the hero has to be conflicted, and they have to have a love interest, and they have to have something else going on there that I think deviates from this original.
Well, I think what they're doing with that is trying to make them relatable. Mm-hmm. You know, and so they're giving some flaws in there, and that goes back to there was one of the earlier ones that was it isn't relatable, but it to me it jogged my memory about relatability. And I think, by the way, sidebar, I think that's why Superman is not a more liked superhero than Batman or Iron Man or some of these others, because those guys are all somewhat relatable. They have flaws. They're from Earth.
That helps.
That helps.
Yeah.
But it's funny, you keep bringing up Marvel, and based on our first conversation a few weeks ago, I keep thinking of Rocky. Because you mentioned it, him being sort of in the same vein.
He's not even from just Earth. He's from Philadelphia.
Yeah. But I had never thought of him, I never considered him on the playing field of the same idea as a Batman. But I get it.
These items are what Stallone wrote that movie trying to channel.
Yeah.
And like I fired up Rocky V the other night because you had mentioned it.
Just jokingly.
Yeah, and
Is that the one with Tommy Gunn?
Yes.
Yes.
And there's about 5 minutes in that movie that I think are so redemptive that I just sent you the link of it. I don't know if you had time to see it or whatever, but it's like and reflective on the past. He understands who he is and who he could be. He also is like the king hero on the archetype scale for overcomes adversity in my brain.
Sure.
So
the
I love
ultimate underdog. I mean, on par with the Rudy movie.
Well, Rudy never wins anything. Rudy got a sack.
That's true.
Rudy got about as much playtime in college as I did.
By the way, the last Rocky was really good.
The Creed one?
The Creed, yeah.
Yeah, I love that one.
I loved it. It was really good.
Yeah, it's like, it was so modern. I felt like, because Stallone wrote that again, I believe.
Did he? I don't know.
Viewer, you'll know. But they made it modern enough, and they brought back some of the original guys that understood with a story curve they were trying to go for. I thought it was fantastic.
I did too, and Michael B. Jordan was great.
That might be the last time I went to a theater live on like opening night to see it.
Oh, on opening night?
Yeah, midnight. I dragged my wife with me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
So that was saves, feels, and heals those in need, feeds those in need. Feeding, I think, and healing is kind of a community thing. Obviously, I don't have the power to healing, but I'm not a doctor or even a dentist for that matter. So,
but I think beyond physical feeding and healing, there's a healing of the soul. There's an inspiration
I didn't think about
to
that.
strive to. I don't see those as necessarily feeding you with nourishment, although it's that. But also, are you giving someone something to look up to? I think about my son, with that as well.
Right.
Like, it's not just am I providing in the sense that I'm giving him shelter and food and shoes, but am I inspiring this sort of attitude within him as well?
Yeah, which is a killer lead into this next one, which is upholds character standards from historical heroics. So I think of the Greek mythology in this one particular, and in Achilles in particular, is that in the story of Achilles, he's always trying to live up to some historical standard or get the glory and all this stuff, which I think obviously that's just a made-up story, but it's a good one because it kind of it shows what like a legacy is in a lot of ways. And so when I hear like Robert Griffin III talk about having legacy, I'm like, oh man, like, I hope that's not what legacies come to. But it can be corrupted like any of these things.
Man, shot at RG3 out of nowhere, poor guy.
Yeah, that is out of nowhere. I just, when he was like between teams or like being cut or something, I had just subscribed to Sirius XM radio.
Yeah.
So I had sports on in my car every time I got in there, and it was over the summer, like that July doldrums month, and they just said RG3 1,000 times, and it's a different type of name, so it pops out when you're hearing it. And my wife was like, "Turn that off! I don't want to hear RG3 one more time." So RG3.
That's funny.
It's not like I don't love you, but
I think he's.
You don't have a legacy. I mean,
I think
not
he's
at
an incredibly misunderstood guy, and
he seems like a great guy.
And I don't know that he is a great guy, or I'm sure there's some narcissism to some of the things he's done, but it's not like he was outwardly a jerk or divisive or getting in trouble or beating up women or anything. I mean, you know what I mean? We didn't like him because of his attitude, and that just seems like sort of strange to me. He got just dumped on.
Well, see, I wasn't, I didn't get to hear much of that. I just know that he was all over the news for like 3 weeks. And
I know.
There weren't any like big headlines.
That's what I'm saying.
So it was just fill and air.
It was just, it was, you listened. It was somebody that people like to, I don't know. It's a weird, there's an aspect of wanting to bring down people, I think, in the
big time. Big time.
And he, celebrated rookie and Heisman Trophy winner, and
that's a really interesting component of the overcomes adversity thing, because if you're going to have staying power as an honorable person, you're going to have to fend off all the little leeches on you. That's a great.
But for some folks, they're only in that arena for a short period of time. So LeBron had that. He was beloved in Cleveland. He decides to go to Miami. He's hated. And you remember that first year in Miami, he was a villain. I mean, he was Dennis Rodman, Latrell Sprewell. Everybody hated him.
Right.
And he even tried to kind of play that villain role, but he's got the longevity to then rewrite the script.
Right.
Robert Griffin III had a 3-year career effectively.
Yeah.
And he wasn't around long enough to do that, maybe.
Yeah, it's funny that we're on the sports topic here, because I feel like sports is like a synthetic creation of the hero tale. It's like, all right, we're going to play a game on Thursday at 9 p.m. Everyone be there. Watch our hero traits play out.
I got a lot of thoughts on sports. We're going to have to do one on sports.
Okay. Yeah, well, this is an excerpt of what we talked about last time, so it's a good idea. Let me see here. Fights for and defends the principles above, which, I mean, kind of goes without saying, because if you're going to overcome adversity, you're going to have to defend these things, right?
Sure.
Here's a really interesting one, and this is...
But I think that the aspect to that is doesn't necessarily do these things quietly. I mean, you may do them quietly, but you'll defend them as well.
You can articulate why, how, and what. If
you think about the atrocities that go on and the people who stand idly by, there's a great quote about that, and I can't remember what it is, but the folks who don't speak up, the folks who allow things to go on, those are the ones that history looks poorly on.
Well, that's true.
Okay, sorry.
That's interesting. Here's a one that was really interesting to me, is that the honorable man deals in specifics rather than generalities.
I see a lot of value in that.
Yeah. So
what does it mean to you, though? Because you're thinking something about
right. So it deals in specifics rather than generalities. So like, if you are worried about something, and say like you're worried about, let's say you're worried about your finances, like you're having trouble making ends meet, and so the goal becomes, I have to get all these things fixed. I have to fix everything in terms of finance right now. And that's a very difficult thing to handle. Mm-hmm. I think what this says is that the honorable person looks at that situation and says, okay, if I've got this larger goal and it's not specific, I need to create things that I can accomplish that will start filling the bucket, so that when it comes time to pay the rent, I'm not at zero.
Right.
And maybe I can work a deal out with the future. Maybe I can negotiate a deal that would allow me more time if I bring something, or I accomplish some of these goals.
I think there's a lot of all of these play into various aspects of life. Sports, being a parent, being in a relationship, your job. This to me is one that's I always think about in jobs. When I would interview people back when I was a manager at a different role, I would always try to figure out the specific things, because everyone has a strategy. Well, I'm going to come in and I'm just going to, be the right person. I'm going to... No. The successful people have things that they do.
Right.
There's ways that they respond to customers. There's things they say. There are tactical elements to their day, not strategy. Like, you do a strategy once, and then every day after that, you do tactical things, specific things, not a generality. So
right.
I think that plays very heavily into your career, but obviously everything else that you do.
Yeah, definitely. So at the very bottom of all this is, I think honorable people are workers. They are doing things. They find, there's an old Roosevelt quote about, you need to give people a job worth doing. Is just essentially the effect of it. Is that when people don't have any purpose, it's really easy to become, to fall outside these things. When you have purpose and you find a job to do and you do it, however long you need to do it, that is one of the most honorable things you can do with your life. Which is like kind of a bummer, because I don't really want to work, but that's what I need to do, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because if I have no task to do, then it's really hard to do any of these things.
Yeah.
So that being said, most our viewer I know has a task that they do. They have a job. They work hard, but there are things that
you can say he.
Yeah.
Because we're 98%. 98% of our viewer is male.
That's true. Yeah, I looked at the analytics. 98% of our viewers are males.
So
that's interesting. But there are times when you get a break from your overriding task, and you get to do something that's fun with the time and freedom you've created, with the dollars that you've generated. You get to go have a hobby. And so we were talking about at the beginning. There's times in life where, like, we had 3 kids in 2 years, and I think I mentioned that before. And so my wife and I were like, we got to figure out some things that we can do at our house from the time kid 1 goes down to the time baby 2 and 3 go down. Like, what can we do together? Have a hobby. So I have some of those, and then there are other just hobbies in general. Like, I think it's a lot of fun to figure out things that you can be excited about. Because if the light goes out on being excited, life gets harder.
That's true. Before we get to the hobbies, I have like a final thought on the honorable piece. And I didn't actually think of this, although I think about it a lot. I didn't relate it to this topic until you started. But I don't know, I kind of came up with this 3-word mantra for myself several years ago. And I've tried to impart it on my son, and I've said it to other people before. But I think that I can boil down living the right way in 3 words, and that's truth, kindness, and balance.
Right, I think I remember you saying that.
Have I said that to you before? Okay, great. I'm trademarking it, so don't go use it. But in my mind, be truthful, seek the truth, be passionate about the truth. Kindness sounds very simple,
right,
but is so important to me. It affects your life in so many ways, not just how you feel.
Kind of fits the empathy play.
That's
there.
right. Yep. Yeah, how you treat people, how people treat you. Are you open to ideas? Do you consider the best things in people? And then the last one being balance, which to me is, you have a contract. You have things you have to do,
right,
but not being addicted to something. right? If I work 80 hours a week, my boss may think that's great, and my wife and kid hate me, right? If I am completely wife and kid related, and all I do is leave work at 3 o'clock, and then I'm not doing a very good job at work. And so having a balance between everything you do, you cannot be overextended in any place.
That's a good point.
So to me, and as you were kind of going through that list, I could categorize all of those things into one of those 3 categories. Right. So in my mind, if we can all seek out and demand truth in ourselves and others, we can be kind and we can have balance,
Yeah, I think that's a great
good
point.
life, a good way to live.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, one last thing is, so this list of honorable traits, and so you've examined those things, maybe not that list, but the things that are around that, and come up with your takeaway.
That's right.
One thing I'd say that people observe these heroic stories or these honorable people, and then it's very easily distortable. Like the truth can be used as a hammer. Empathy can be used as a way to manipulate. It's just like you do have to be careful that you're not confusing yourself, that you're doing the right thing, or you're doing this honorable thing, whereas in reality it's designed for a selfish reason.
Well, and I also think truth has become being right, and it isn't that, right?
Right.
Like there's a truth that I feel and that I live, and whether you think the same as me or not doesn't affect the truth whatsoever. It doesn't affect who I am, how I act. So I don't have to convince you that I'm right. That doesn't matter.
Right.
It's a matter of, there's an inner truth that you live to.
A code, a standard that you
right.
are constantly trying to measure up to. And if you're always making the goal or you're always making the standard, maybe it's time to bump the standard up, right?
Could be, yeah.
I think that's a great way to become more honorable.
That's right.
Interesting. But let's hit these hobbies, right? So I was kind of explaining the guidelines on when I kind of went through this exercise. And so my hobbies are like things that can be done extremely local because we have 3 counterparties now.
Yeah.
And one is we bought a sewing machine, and like my wife is interested in it. I think it's fantastic, and it's one of those ones where you can like download files into it, and you can say, all right, here's the file, here's the stitch I want, and just run a piece of material through there, and it'll make something for you. It's come a long way from like the one that you like have to push on with your foot.
So how do you do this together? Like, what are the aspects that you two each do in sewing?
Yeah, so what I found about sewing that I didn't expect is that 80% of you making something with a sewing machine is prep, like cutting and pinning and stuff. So like I make pocket squares. It's very simple, but the most of the idea is I take an old shirt, the back panel of the shirt like pretty much is the size. I think a pocket square is like 18 inches by 18 inches in the conventional sense, and like this panel works perfect. Don't get the armpits in there because sometimes there can be a little stink. But but yeah, it's just like a fun thing to do.
And it's right by your nose all the time. Like, good God, what is
get it
that?
out of here. Yeah. So that's what we do, and so you can sit down at the table for a couple hours, and
I love it.
I need to use the machine for a minute, and it almost never coincides. So it's just a good little hangout at the house with.
I like that. I like that one. So I'll give you one that we started. I don't know if this is a hobby. It's just a different way of doing things, and I think that's what a hobby kind of is breaking up the routine, finding something that isn't work focused, that isn't stress focused, that you can just do either as a community of 1 or a community of 5 or whatever it is. But we started doing this a couple of years ago, and this may sound stupid, but we started making pizzas at home.
Right.
Like, we all eat pizza. We all freaking love pizza.
Right.
And you can really simply make dough, grill it on your grill.
Right.
And so we'll have, like, if we invite people over, sometimes we'll have, like, a pizza party. So I'll roll out everyone's dough, and then we've got, you know, like all kinds of toppings that you can choose and make your own, and it's like a fun, like, community thing.
Yeah, I like that.
And then, you know, grill it and it's ready in a few minutes, and everybody gets something different, and we all talk about whose is better, and mine's obviously
Probably
the best because I'm super good at it. But I don't know if that's a hobby, but it's in my mind, like, the idea there is do something that takes longer. So I've never made sushi at home, and I'm sure it's not going to be as good as the sushi I get at a sushi restaurant. But I dig the idea of buying the ingredients and rolling it and making each one different. And if anything, you appreciate when you go and get really good sushi somewhere. Like, there's a guy back there rolling up that fish and putting 16 ingredients in there. I think that's kind of cool.
That's a thing to inspire, you know, kind of gratefulness. And I think one of the underpinnings of having a great hobby is the time spent.
I agree. It needs to take time.
It has to take time because there's an old Simon Sinek speech where he says the thing that makes your charity worthwhile is it's not, oh, I wrote a check for $1,000 and I guess, you know, it's like, oh, good for you, bud. But if you're like, oh, I went down to the soup kitchen and I handed out soup for 6 hours, which if that guy commands a pretty decent dollar hourly rate, still doesn't add up to $1,000, but you see that as being much more giving than check for $1,000, right? Which I think is interesting. Pizza,
make your own pizza or make your own sushi or
cooking at home.
Cooking at home.
Yeah, okay, I like that. My next one was a bowling league. You ever seen like
I've been in a bowling league.
You've been in a bowling league?
Lee, it was so much fun.
It looks like fun. You get the shirt, you get the shoes, you get a ball with the funny logo on it.
I felt really bad about, like, I would downplay how much fun it was when I would come home because it was on like a Wednesday night, and you know, my wife didn't care, but I'd be gone until like 11 o'clock, and I'd get home like, you know, I had to drive all the way down there, but it was so much fun. Like the cool thing about I know this was yours, and I won't shut up. But the cool thing is you get the competitive aspect of an individual sport, but you also get the team camaraderie because you're bowling with like 3 other guys, and you also get to drink beer while you do it. Bowling league, I highly recommend.
So
Have you not done it?
No, I haven't. So like
we need to get a bowling league going.
You know what's hilarious about this is that this list I made is from months ago, and one of the items on it is do a podcast. And we did it.
We did it. We knocked that one off.
So yeah, and like that doesn't obviously involve my wife, but she didn't want to be in your chair.
Yeah,
she was offered the position.
We could do a couples bowling league. Nobody has ever done that. I've never seen 2 couples over there.
Well, you ever see that show Roseanne?
Yeah.
So like, isn't Roseanne in the bowling league? With Dan?
She is, and I'm sure up in
Langford, Illinois.
Langford, Illinois. Yeah, I think there's somewhere in Illinois.
That is a stat that I probably don't need to remember.
Bowling league is a great idea. I highly recommend it, and there's several places around here you can do that.
So I have just a couple like sub points on that one, which is fantasy sports.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of fantasy sports that you don't have to leave the house to do. They're very inexpensive, and if you do anything but fantasy football, they can be pretty time consuming. Which is like if you play fantasy baseball and your wife is interested in baseball at all, you can do that, and it'll cost you 45 minutes every night. It's better than a TV show or something.
Yeah. I'm not a fantasy guy.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't.
My life's a fantasy. And
then on that same token, I have competitive games of any kind. We got a backgammon game. It's super simple. It's like chess where you can be better at it than I am just because I know the rules. But like those types of small games, I think.
I agree.
Fun.
We do that at the house. We'll play Monopoly. We play dominoes quite a bit, which dominoes is a good math game for the kid.
Right.
And you can get a lot of their allowance money back. You can claw it back.
That's you reclaiming your assets. I like that.
You got to teach them. Here's another game/sport that I don't think a lot of people play, and it has kind of a stoner stigmatism, but it shouldn't. Is disc golf. Have you ever played disc golf?
No, but Like if you go to any church in America, they've been like putting disc golf courses around because people love it.
They do, and it is almost free. I mean, a disc costs about $8, but you can buy 1 or 3 or 4, and you'll have those for years as long as you're not awful and throw it into the woods.
Right.
But that's also something you can do with your kids. Like I take my son out to play, and he and I play, and he loves it. And you know, it's a par 3 for me, it's a par 5 for him, and it actually works out like really even.
Yeah.
But that's just a fun, easy sport to get into. And there's courses all over. You can find them online. Like there's Texas disc golf courses you can Google, and
I know for a fact
where they all are.
They're outside our community center and kind of up by where we live. I'm sure there's one by you too.
Yeah.
And then like any church of any size will have one.
A lot of churches
they'll let you
have
play.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's no problem. The other one I have here is you ever watch the History Channel and they like bring that guy up and he's like, it says like, this is Mike, and he's an expert on Egypt for these 7 years of time, and he like standing there and he's like, and then this happened, and you totally believe him, right?
Yeah.
If you ever like put that guy's name in on Google, it's just like a guy.
Yeah.
And he's not a professor, he's not a PhD, he's just like a guy that like decided he was going to be an expert on this period of time. And I think that would be a fun hobby. Like sit around for
a thing.
Yeah, really well.
Yeah.
And then start shopping it around. Be like, yeah, I'll give you my take. I'm an expert on Egypt from this year to this year.
That's a great idea. What topic are you closest to being an expert on that maybe not many people are?
Ooh, now that is
because you know a lot about a lot, or you know a little about a lot.
Yeah.
What do you know a lot about a little?
So I was early on in the Bitcoin thing.
Yes.
So cryptocurrency is interesting, and I can kind of make a case for why it's good or it's bad, which I think is enough to be. There's not enough people that are willing to have that conversation because they don't know, and this is one of my other big things in life is that I know enough about markets and finance and stocks and bonds to pose as an expert. But there are so many people that know more, and I would be fearful to be exposed by those people as posing as an expert.
Right.
And I would call your local finance guy and see if he's really the real deal. Because there's a lot. I was a trader for 6 years. I traded bonds and equity index futures. I trade currently, and I do the Bitcoin swaps and stuff. But the thing that always shook me so much about that world is you would find people and you'd say like, hey, what's a future? And they'll babble a couple lines and they'll say, hey, don't worry about it, it's too complicated.
Is it that they don't want you to know?
I don't think they have a really good understanding.
That's probably it.
If you ask someone in finance what an option is, they won't be able to tell you in a way you'll understand. Most people won't. And that would kind of be the high watermark on whether or not a finance person can explain things to you.
Goes back to our
what's
articulate.
A put? What's a call? And they'll be like, well, you get to set a price and then you can buy it back later and buy a specific date, buy a specific time, and like that's a call. But if you start running into people talking about stocks and bonds, like that is not a given.
Yeah.
That whole industry is based on like, I don't really want you to know what is going on or what to do because that's my value in this.
The more information you have.
That always bothered me about that space, but it's a legit issue.
The thing I'm probably
what are you closest to?
Closest to being an expert is on potato chips.
You are the potato chip king, though.
I would say that there may be a dozen people that have had more people who don't work in potato chips. Like I don't have any working interest in potato chips, but I have had over 250 different potato chips from all over the world.
So I'm going to pitch the potato chip day.
Yeah, I have.
So one of the coolest things about Chris Ryder that I found out early on in knowing you was that this guy conducts a potato chip party on Potato Chip Day at his home, and it is like, you'd think this is just like a fun little nonsense day. It is well attended.
It's well attended. It's March 14th is National Potato Chip Day. I don't have to tell you that. And this will be the 10th year in a row
Right.
we've had our
10 years.
mashed potato chips. It's a big deal.
That's commitment to potato chips.
Yeah, and each year we have, about 30 different potato chips.
Right, I'm
from
always fascinated
all over
by
the
that,
world,
yeah.
and not the stuff you find from Lay's. And you try them, and you rate the best, and then there's a secret flavor. And
That's
if you guess the
pretty
secret
fun.
flavor, you get your name on a trophy.
It's a substantial trophy too. Like your fantasy football league would be proud of this trophy.
It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
I would venture to say it is the only party of its kind in the world. I mean, who has had a potato chip party for 10 years in a row?
Right, like you could be the guy on the History Channel when they're talking about potato chips. They put you up there and they're like, well, let me tell you about the history of us.
This idiot spent thousands of dollars on chips. My worst fear is that people like come and leave and they're like, God, why does he do this? This is so stupid.
I think it's fantastic.
Okay, well, people say that to my face, but I feel like they're in the car driving home like, man, I hope this is the last year.
Well, like, what is the alternative? Like,
yeah, it's a Saturday.
Hey, come over to my house and don't care about anything. And so one attribute that I've found to be extremely cool in the last probably 6 years is for the ability for people to get excited about something.
Yeah.
And it's getting so rare because as you get older, people get more jaded.
Yeah.
And it's like, and they also are worried about being rejected. That you might not think the thing is cool.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I don't really care.
I think there's been a renaissance of nerds,
right,
and that being now a cool thing. It's now people celebrate the things that they're nerdy about.
Right.
Whereas it used to be you kind of hid it, and maybe 15, 20 years ago, and maybe it's because we're at a different age. Right. Maybe when we were 25, we weren't as willing to show our nerdiness about stuff.
Right.
But I kind of feel like culturally that there is more of an acceptance and almost a celebration of what you're nerdy about.
Right. Well, I think we've kind of hit on this before, is that the advent of the internet allows you to find those people that are also interested.
True.
So it cuts that whole risk of, oh, they're going to think I'm weird.
Yeah, because there's tons of us out there.
Yeah, and then you might have to get in your car this time, but
yeah.
Which is interesting.
Okay.
Do you have any more?
I do have. I have one more.
Give me one more.
Make a thing.
Okay, I have 3D printing on here.
Well,
so same
I'll tell you where this actually came up yesterday. So I'm sitting upstairs in my office, finishing out my day. My son gets home from school. He's like, Dad, I want to go to Home Depot. This girl had, fidget spinners.
Right.
And there's fidget cubes. Now there's this new thing. I don't even know what it's called, but it's like kind of like a Rubiks Cube. It's like eight little blocks. Think of 8 dice together, and you can unfold it like this, and then you can unfold it like this, and it's connected in a way that it can unfold and fold in a bunch of different ways.
Okay.
I don't remember what it's called. But he was
cool.
Super excited. I'm like, I can't. I'm still working. Like at 5 o'clock, we'll go to Home Depot. And he's like, I might make one. I was like, great. So he goes and pulls up YouTube.
Right.
He gets the dice out of the Yahtzee box and 3 more. And he watches a video and uses tape to make them. And I was so proud of him. It was really cool.
That is cool.
We still bought one on Amazon later that night that'll get here tomorrow. But he was super proud of it. He learned about something. He applied that to materials that were around the house, and I thought that was cool. And it was kind of a reminder to me that you can go make stuff. We probably did that a lot more as kids, and he's willing to do it. But it goes back to that time, and
Well, he has the opportunity of time at 9, right? 9.
Yeah, 9. Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, make a thing.
Yeah, that is in my mind, like, one of the coolest things you can do is to make something that could be deemed not valuable in its components and its ingredients, and then put them together and it's valuable.
Yeah.
So like I was looking at, because I love to hear people's business ideas. I love to give them away for free. I don't want to be restrictive of ideas. So I was looking at this one. I was having a conversation with a guy where we were talking about this, and he showed a picture of a piece of iron, and he said the commodity price of iron is X, and then someone takes that iron and then they form it into nails, and then the going rate on nails is some function of like 5x on the commodity itself. And then there's another picture of someone that made staples out of the same raw commodity, and that's like 50x. So I think that's really interesting, that value chain that's created there.
Yeah.
That is, you know, that's got to be what, like 10 hobbies we threw out there. There are more, unless you have one more that's burning.
Not burning, no. Ride a bike.
Yeah, I'm not on the bike ride.
Not like for exercise. For the reason that we rode a bike as a kid.
Right, okay.
It's just fun.
Yeah, go banging around a little
we
bit.
stop doing things. We start looking for these other reasons to do things. And I ride my bike sometimes around the neighborhood with my son, and it's just kind of fun.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, go ride your bike.
Yeah, I think that is a good one. I think there's like a really cool, the bike is like a coming of age time. I remember it very fondly, like that first instrument of freedom.
Totally agree.
So we can talk about that some other time. But yeah, that's a good rundown on some hobbies. Thanks for hanging around and talking with us here, or listening to us rather. That's a wrap for today.
Be honorable and don't be bored.
That's right. Get to work.